If you're a true fan of Fight Night picks, you will get quizzical about this fight. We have Shamil Abdurakhimov taking on Sergei Pavlovich in a battle of ranked and unranked heavyweights because for both of these guys, their last wins in the UFC Octagon date back to 2019, and until last week, they were both ranked in the UFC, and I've had my gripes about Sergei Pavlovich being ranked in the UFC because since he made his debut against Alistair Overeem, where he lost in a fight that he shouldn't have been matched up in 3 years and 3 months ago, he went on to beat Marcelo Golm by knockout, no longer in the UFC, and Maurice Green by knockout, no longer in the UFC.
Boss?
He was ranked in the UFC for about 3 years without winning. And he was booked in fights, but he could never make it. Issues with injuries, issues with visas, travel issues, so on and so forth. For Shamil Abdurakhimov, though, he's currently ranked 10th in the UFC's heavyweight division. And if we look at that heavyweight division, who's ranked below him? Tom Aspinall, one half of your main event this weekend, Augusto Sakai Waldharris, Blagoy Ivanov, and Sergey Spivak. And out of those guys that are ranked below him, only Blagoy Ivanov has survived a stab wound to the heart. He's the toughest man in all of MMA, and you can never take that away from him. But when I look at this fight, Shamil Abdurakhimov has suffered from inactivity of late. His last win, Marcin Tybura, 2 years and 10 months ago. He loses to Curtis Blades at UFC 242 and looks terrible. Terrible. Now, maybe it was the heat of Abu Dhabi. That might have been it, but he looked bad. So then he takes, 2 years and 2 months off. He fights Chris Daukaus, and he looked a day late and a dollar short in that fight. And he had moments in the first round, but overall, he ends up getting finished. And for me, for Shamil Abdurakhimov, it really is. If you think of a guy with a Sambo mentality, it is Shamil Abdurakhimov. And I know, he had a main event slot back in 2016 against Derek Lewis. Do people remember it?
I'll bring it up probably too much.
Yeah, but probably not. And when we look at this fight, for Pavlovich, he was very, very active. He beat Kirill Sadelnikov to get into the UFC, Baby Fedor. I don't think he goes by that nickname anymore.
I would hope not.
He always did. For Pavlovich, he's a couple of months shy of his 30th birthday. It's inactivity on his side. He is one of the most bodied up, hulked up looking guys in this division. So you look at this and you go, okay, one guy's over 40, and he's looked a little bit of a step slow. However, had some moments against Daukaus, so we'll give him props. And he's a takedown king. Sergei Pavlovich is the heaviest of handed southpaws that you will see in MMA.
Not a takedown king?
His takedown defense is not great. However, if you take out the Alistair Overeem fight, he's 14-0, and it's not like he's really faced all that much adversity. So I look at this fight as the biggest problem for anybody's parlay if they feel really, really secured with young Sergei Pavlovich. But overall, you gotta kind of hate the fight a little bit.
It's not the best fight the heavyweight division could make. Because here's the thing. The lines are blurred, to quote Robin Thicke from 2012, between unranked and ranked heavyweights at this point. There's just not a big separation between the two. Go back to, the bantamweights, featherweights, lightweights. There's a big difference between the 15th ranked lightweight in the world and an unranked fighter that you think is very good in the lightweight class. Because it's so deep and there's so much talent that to get to the top, you have to fight, basically 5 or 6 guys who would be ranked in any other division just to get the opportunity to get into the rankings. At heavyweight, you're just going to be around, and that's pretty much it. And for Shamil Abdurakhimov, you're right, hasn't looked great as of late, but I do go back to that Marcin Tybura fight, and there's a little bit of hope left in me from there, because we know how good Tybura's looked after that fight. That was sort of in his little weird mid-career crisis, if you want to call it. But he looked great in that fight, and he out-Tybura, which does give me a lot of confidence going into this fight, because Marcin Tybura is a much better defensive and offensive grappler than Sergei Pavlovich, and if Shamil can somehow turn back the clock and have a similar performance to that, then you're right, this could be an absolute parlay buster, and Shamil could look amazing. But then you go to his next fight, and Shamil, like you said, is very grappling heavy. You don't expect him to lose a primary grappling fight. Curtis Blades out-wrestled him to the point where, that wasn't even a TKO because of ground and pound. Shamil couldn't defend takedown attempts and just couldn't get back up to his feet at a certain point. He got absolutely dominated in that fight. And then the next one against Chris Daukaus, landed some good shots early on. The Daukaus
Years later,
exactly. But then he gets flatlined pretty bad on the feet because the speed really was an issue. I just think with Abdurakhimov, he's always an interesting test for a prospect because, again, we know what he's good at. We kind of know what he's bad at this point. And for Sergei Pavlovich, there's so many question marks around him that this could be the fight that Shamil turns back the clock on. But I think if Pavlovich can just keep this on the feet, being 11 years younger at heavyweight really does mean something. And I know at the heavyweight division, you can stick around a little bit longer. We see it all the time. Stipe's getting older now. Alistair, just the list goes on about guys who can get later into their 30s, early 40s and still have success. But I do think age is going to play a big key in this fight. And for Pavlovich, big step up in competition, going from Marcelo Golm to the likes of Shamil Abdurakhimov. But
no, sorry, Maurice Green.
Yes, Marcelo Golm to Maurice Green, then to Shamil. But I do feel like Sergei's ready for that challenge.
I mean, my goodness gracious. Shamil Abdurakhimov open is still at a plus 235 because I wouldn't touch this one with a 10-foot pole. And Sergei Pavlovich is a minus 275, the fan vote. We won't even leave it up to a surprise. 500 total votes on the nose, 93% Pavlovich, 85% by knockout for the 7% that I have Abdurakimov, 36% by decision, 48% by knockout. I have Sergei Pavlovich based on the speed and the power. But when it comes to Abdurakimov, you know the fact that he has that Sambo background in his back pocket. Sometimes he's able to go out there and do that. The last 3 wins that he has are over Chase Sherman, Andrei Arlovsky, and Marcin Tybura. So again, Arlovsky ages like a fine wine. But I've got Pavlovich in this fight. Again, you go back, you do the tape study, the power's the equalizer at heavyweight, and it gets it done for him to the tune of, 14 wins and the lone loss to Alistair Overeem, where it was way too much too soon. So I've got Pavlovich, but I don't like this fight. Don't touch it.
Yeah, I don't feel great about this one either. Because again, it's a big step up in competition for Pavlovich. I believe he's ready for it because Abdurakimov isn't prime Abdurakimov anymore. And even Shamil in his prime was like a 10 to 15 guy, I think. So for Pavlovich, this feels stylistically like a good
Pavlovich's last fight 2 years and 3 months ago. It's pop and popcorn for the boys. Going with Pavlovich in this one. You let us know down below in the comment section who you have. The return of Iceland's Gunnar Nelson taking on Takashi Sato. It should be a great fight. I can't wait for it. Keep locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.